let's launch Bentley Power Civil, and we're going to get into Chapter 5. Chapter 5, we'll open up a file called siteplan2d.dgn and go ahead and get back into a project file through SiteModeler inside Chapter 5 called siteplan.gsf. Now we're pretty much complete with our grading at this point. Go ahead and take a look at some changes if we want to make some minor changes. For example, up around the building, you may notice that the contours, because once we added the concrete walkway, we triangulated from the grass over to the concrete walkway. So that makes our contours kind of shoot across that area as well. That may or may not be what you desire. For example, if we want like a little drainage ditch in there, we could achieve that by simply changing the feature of these elements from break line to boundary. So we can do that through our Elements tools. Go ahead and pull that palette out. And we have a tool called Change Feature. And it simply just allows me to change the feature of multiple elements together. So I'm going to change them to boundary. They are break lines, change them to boundary. I'll select those elements and click Apply. And hopefully you'll notice that the contours now kind of hug the boundary and come back in. Some other changes we may want to take a look at, for example, our pond. Let's go ahead and take a look at the pond. First thing I want to do is let's check the volume of the pond. I'll use a drainage analysis tool to do that. So if I look at my analysis palette, bring that out. We've looked at the height tool and the profile tool. I'm going to go down a little further to drainage tools. This will allow me to kind of look at the terrain or the model or object from a drainage perspective. And I just really want to know what the volume is in that pond. So I'm going to choose Object Pond 1, and I'm going to use the Geopack Pond Analysis tool. Toggle on Display Only, and click Apply. Basically, I just need a data point somewhere along the berm of the pond. Geopack will follow that, trace that to the low point, and then kind of fill that back up. So basically, I data pointed on the slope. It went downstream to here, it stopped, it filled back up, and eventually it overflows at the top edge of the berm that we created. And at that point, where it overflows, that has 341,292 cubic feet of volume. And its approximate depth of 5.06 feet. If that's too large or more volume than I need, well then I need to make changes to my pond. So how would I go about doing that? Well, if you remember, we created the pond bottom 4 feet below ground, and then we put the top 5 feet above that, and we made sure that the top was associated with the bottom. So theoretically now we can make changes to the bottom and the top will change as well. So I'll click the Scale tool, for example, and I'll scale the pond down 0.9. That way I need less volume. So I'm going to scale the pond down, and I choose the pond bottom, and the pond top goes with it. So you see the graphics update, and then of course the model updates. So now let's check the volume. Bring back my drainage tools, my pond analysis tool, click Apply, and now I have 280,411 cubic feet of storage. So a little less because of the less area. So we can make changes like that. What about if I move the pond, or I need to change the slopes coming off of the pond? I like the slopes along the back, but maybe along the front I want to steepen those slopes. let's take a look at how we change that. We use the Edit Object tool. Every object has side slopes coming off of it. Those are kept track of under the Slopes tab. In our particular case, Pond 1 has 3:1 side slopes. Now I can change them to 4:1 or 5:1, but again, that would be along the entire edge of that object. But if I want to transition or have what we call dynamic slopes, we have another option for that. Under the side slope option, dynamic slopes. So for example, I want 2:1 slopes in cut or fill. I can place those, like for example, I want to start my 2:1 slopes here. I'll add that. And then I want to stop those 2:1 slopes right here. And I'll add that. Then maybe I want to transition down to 4:1. So I'll go 4:1 in the dialog. And I'll just change the color so we can see that. Locate those. And I'll start 4:1 here. Add that to the list. Then I'll locate the end of my 4:1, let's say here. And I could continue with more types of slopes, but basically Geopack will run 4:1 slopes along the back, 2:1 slopes up front, and then in between it'll transition. So I'll click Apply. And again, it pulls those slopes back and then widens them out on that side. So you can choose dynamic slopes. If you're not happy, you want to go back to the 3:1 slopes, you just change that and click Apply. So changes should be relatively easy to any and all of the elements and objects.